following program is exclusively produced and distributed by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc., all rights reserved.
Hi, Golden Age film fanatics, and welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. My name is Dick Dinman, and our goal is to become your exclusive guide to the very best of the Golden Age classics coming out on DVD. We'll have reviews, breaking news of upcoming releases, plenty of surprise guests, and a special feature devoted to the great Golden Age film composers, which we call Cinemusic. So let's turn on the marquee and lights, camera, action.
It's time for Dick's Picks, in which I get to shine the spotlight on one of my Dick's Picks of the week. Our friends at Kino Lorber have just released two brand new 2K mastered dramas starring swimming star Esther Williams. That's right, I said dramas. The first, entitled The Unguarded Moment, stars Esther as a high school teacher stalked by a peeping Tom who might just be the same homicidal sex fiend wanted by the police. Next, Esther co-stars with her then-current paramour, Jeff Chandler, in a breathtakingly shot CinemaScope and color island adventure entitled Raw Wind in Eden. Both The Unguarded Moment and Raw Wind in Eden are now available in Blu-ray magnificence, courtesy of Kino Lorber Home Entertainment. Even as we speak. Stay tuned for more Dick's Picks, coming up on DVD Classics Corner on the Air very soon. And it's my great pleasure to welcome David Del Valle, journalist, columnist, film historian, and DVD and Blu-ray, radio and television commentator, to DVD Classics Corner on the Air for the very first time. David Del Valle, welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. At long last, I have no excuses for the fact that you haven't been on the show in the 18-plus years that the show's been on, but we are going to make up for that in the near future. And we must, and it's a delight and welcome on the show.
Well, thank you so much, Dick. I mean, for someone that I knew at the very height of my time in Hollywood to today, it's about time, and you're absolutely right. You and I have lots to discuss, and so let's get started.
Now, first of all, we're going to talk about Esther Williams' first film after her contract, or after she walked away, I think ill-advisedly, from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. She then did a dramatic film called The Unguarded Moment for Universal. And David, the floor is yours. What are your observations about Unguarded Moment?
Well, The Unguarded Moment for me was a film that I had started watching when I was very young on television. So I did not, a lot of the more adult ideas, like the being raped or being stalked, was kind of over my head a bit. But I was, even as a child, transfixed by the performance of Edward Andrews as John Saxon's father.
Yeah.
And I am here to tell you that the fact it was an Esther Williams movie was kind of secondary to the fact that it was this kind of, at the time, Universal International was doing an awful lot of westerns, an awful lot of soap operas, and an awful lot of horror movies. So this kind of fell into a police procedural melodrama, because in the 50s, my friend, no one talked about film noir. They were crime films. And only the French, who then got our movies as they did Edgar Allan Poe, they're the ones that said, "Oh, monsieur, these movies are film noir, and they are very exciting, blah, blah, blah." And Godard, made Bogart the patron saint of film noir. But really, Esther Williams acquits herself beautifully in it, I think. She reminds me, and I don't think it's an accident, one of her best friends was Doris Day. And Doris Day did a movie called Julie about a year before The Unguarded Moment, where she's terrorized by a homicidal husband, played by Louis Jourdain, and she has to run. And, it's like her performance in The Man Who Knew Too Much for Hitchcock. So I'm bringing this up because I think Esther Williams' acting style in The Unguarded Moment and the other movie we're going to talk about is very much in the way Doris Day acted.
Well, I have to tell you, David, you've hit upon the only thing that I totally disagree with you about. I know you, in the commentary, you equate Esther Williams' dramatic performances with Doris Day's, and I couldn't disagree more, because I'm thinking, well, first of all, try to compare Esther Williams as a teacher in The Unguarded Moment to Doris Day as a teacher in Teacher's Pet.
In Teacher's Pet.
It can't be done. But wait a minute. Do you, for a moment, see Esther attempting Storm Warning, Love Me or Leave Me, Julie, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Midnight Race?
Well,
wait a minute.
Right.
Doris Day had one thing that Esther Williams never had, to my mind, and that was vulnerability. Do you disagree?
No, you're right. You're right. In retrospect, you are. But the reason that Doris came to mind with me was I had just watched this movie called Julie, where she's an airline steward that has to fly a plane way before Karen Black did.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was the same energy. So what I'm assuming is that Esther was kind of thinking of Doris when she played, in both of the movies we're going to talk. At least that was just an observation, and I could be very wrong about it, but let's face it, I will agree with you in the sense that I believe Doris Day was a better dramatic actress
and comedic. Oh,
absolutely. Well, we never tested Esther's comedic abilities terribly over at MGM because, was it Fanny Brice that said, Esther Williams is the star when she's wet, when she's dry, not so much.
Right. Right. And I'm so glad you brought up character actor Edward Andrews. In the commentary, you guys mention that he did basically comedy before this. And I have to tell you, I think it was maybe a year and a half before, when I first saw Edward Andrews in a Phil Carlson shocker called Phoenix City Story. And he was so slimy and so repugnant. He literally makes his character, by comparison, in Unguarded Moment, look like a schoolboy.
Well, you have to realize, Dick, that I think comedic actors are always a surprise in dramatic roles. Yeah. Don Rickles is absolutely fabulous in a movie called The Rat Race with Debbie Reynolds. Yeah. Absolutely as slimy as you get. He's a great villain, and Buddy Hackett could do it. A lot of comedic. There was this. We were doing. Speaking of Julie Gergo, we were doing The Barefoot Contessa, and I told this story that Bud Abbott of Abbott and Costello was offered the role that went to Edmund O'Brien, who won the Oscar. Best supporting actor for The Barefoot Contessa. But Lou Costello told Bud, if you do this movie, we're done. Whoa. And I bet you Bud would have won an Oscar. But it was just one of those, it was very acrimonious between the two of them. Yeah. And he said, no, you can't do that movie. Because, Oliver Hardy and Stan Laurel did movies independent of each other. Yeah. And, to some success. Once again, comic actors in dramatic roles. But Edward Andrews was a staple on television. Yeah. He was in everything, and he could play anything. Yeah. And it was only on television that you really got to see the the range of some of these actors.
Yeah.
But he is, I mean, let's face it, Dick, there are things about his performance as the father in this that border on incest. And for the 1950s, it's just it's an astonishing performance.
It certainly
comes from Rosalind Russell of all people.
Yeah. And it certainly is, because certainly the most riveting scene in the movie is not with Esther. It's Edward Andrews sitting on the bed with his son, John Saxon in...
That is the creepiest scene.
Wow.
Probably one of the creepiest scenes in 50s cinema, right up there with The Bad Seed.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And I have to tell you, though, I mean, would you agree with me that the teacher that Esther Williams plays in Unguarded Moment is the stupidest teacher ever? I mean...
Well, you couldn't be more right, because, first of all, she goes to meet this guy, this stranger who she's just gotten these mashups. She goes into this darkened place that's right out of a Universal horror movie.
Right.
To confront this guy.
And what is she wearing? What is she wearing?
One of those, the tightest sweater that she could get. But, and of course, the thing about it is, in those days, everybody was trying. It was kind of a male fantasy that your high school teacher or your junior high school teacher was a dish.
Yeah.
And she was always being hooted and whistled at when she turned to write something on the blackboard in her tight skirt. And, I mean, it's a cliche. It's like the beautiful secretary when she takes her glasses off. She's even more beautiful.
Oh, it happened. It happened to me.
That Esther. Everything that happens to Esther in this movie could have been avoided if she hadn't been so stupid.
That's right.
And
I will tell you, I don't know whether you agree with me, but I will tell you that I do believe Esther Williams left MGM just a little bit too early, because I looked over the grosses of her swimming extravaganzas prior to Jupiter's Darling, and every single one made a profit, some an astonishing profit. I think she could have gone on, but not in Athena, which she had worked on with Chuck Walters before it was taken away from her, and certainly not in the god-awful, as far as I'm concerned, movie The Opposite Sex.
That's the musical remake of The Women.
Yeah.
Oy vey.
Awful. I do want to say a word about John Saxon. This is supposedly his big break, and he gets a special introduction.
Well, he's in mint condition in that, for sure.
He sure is. I was not impressed with him when I first saw the movie when it came out. And it wasn't until a film directed by, possibly next to Michael Winner, my least favorite director, Sidney J. Fury, a film called The Appaloosa for Universal, where John Saxon...
With Brando.
He takes the movie away from Brando. He's that good in it. So he really became a superb actor.
Physically, he was just an Adonis, really.
Oh, sure.
Very handsome.
Sure.
And I think became a very interesting character actor, because he did the Bruce Lee movie, he did Black Christmas.
Yeah.
He did a lot of genre and cult films, and he worked right up until the end.
Yeah.
And he was a decent, and I met him a few times. I'm sure you did too. And he was always nice.
Yeah, I have to tell you who I think is the funniest individual in The Unguarded Moment. And for me, that's Les Tremayne. Watching his total lack of comfort anytime any situation arises, watching this man sink into his chair, it's priceless.
Well, the very last time I think Mr. Les Tremayne was in a public thing, it was just before he died. He lived to be very old. He came down to the Egyptian here in Hollywood for a screening of War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
and Anne Robinson was in her glory because, that was her big movie.
Right.
And Les was so old and so discombobulated. He came in and he said, "Everyone, hello, I'm Les Tremaine. I have no idea why I'm here. I can't remember making this movie. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but it's great to see you all." And he was just delightful.
Yeah.
Just terrific. So Les Tremaine, like Morris Arkham, was one of these character actors that was always in a science fiction movie.
Right.
The character actors, to me, are really the unsung heroes of all these movies.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll return with another dramatic Esther Williams role in a film called Raw Wind in Eden. And we'll be right back after this.
We pause now for station identification.
DVD Classics Corner on the Air is exclusively produced and released by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc. All rights reserved. And we're back with David Del Valle. And David, give me your assessment of this exotic island adventure entitled Raw Wind in Eden.
Raw Wind in Eden. Well, first of all, as I told you yesterday when we were chatting, I said this would be a great double bill with A Cold Wind in August.
Yeah.
Two exotic titles that have nothing to do with anything. There's no Raw Wind in Eden.
Yeah.
There could have been a Raw Wind. I mean, Jeff Chandler's perfectly capable of being a Raw Wind.
Yeah.
But the poster art doesn't deliver. Movies are like books when you see them in the store. That one sheet's going to get you in the seat to watch this movie.
Yeah.
And, of course, Jeff Chandler all buff and tanned with that great silver hair, holding shirtless, an exotic Esther Williams. Of course, you're going to want to see it with a provocative title like that. But for me, Dick, Raw Wind in Eden was like a very innocuous, sexy travelogue with absolutely nothing dire going on to get excited about. Will Esther Williams sleep with Jeff Chandler? Well, considering her character in the movie, she slept with everyone else in Rome before she gets on this plane, and she makes it very clear that she's got a meter on it because, she's like going from one rich man to the next, and whether they're married or involved with other people doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah.
So I would have given her role to someone like Hedy Lamarr or some glamorous, Joan Collins even in those days.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, Dorothy Malone, who of course acquitted herself, if you want to talk about a tramp. She got the Oscar for playing the slut in Written on the Wind,
Right.
and her dance up those stairs that gives her father a heart attack. Hard to beat.
What I'd like to do, since we're talking about Esther's movie with Raw Wind in Eden with Jeff Chandler, what I'd like to do is address, I guess you'd call it the elephant in the room. And I must tell you, I totally enjoy Esther in her MGM films, especially if it's got Van Johnson or Ricardo Montalban or Red Skelton.
Well, they're beautiful.
They're beautiful, and they're fun, and they're not demanding on Esther, and she's perfectly fine in them. But what she did, the way she trashed her then lover at the time of Raw Wind in Eden, Jeff Chandler, in her book, in her bio, to me it's disgusting. I must tell you, I was appalled. But then I saw Esther in person. The first time I saw Esther in person was after Red Skelton died. They had a celebration of Red Skelton in North Hollywood at the Television Academy. And she had nothing good to say about not only Red, but anyone. I mean, Victor Mature was an animal. Howard Keel sung like a bullfrog. And it went on and on and on. And I frankly found this appalling.
But, having done two different Esther Williams, both after her MGM, with two different commentators. I did one Unguarded moment with David Dakota, the filmmaker that is making a lot of cult movies, and Daniel Kramer, who makes movies as well, and he's a real film scholar. And yet, we all came to the same conclusions, and I'm the one that read the book. And when I read the book, I immediately disliked her as a human being.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you something, Dick. I did the commentary on Female on the Beach, which was a Joan Crawford, Jeff Chandler movie.
Yeah.
And I went to the Margaret Herrick, and I got all kinds of, diaries and all kinds of comments from co-stars, and I interviewed Natalie Schaefer a few years ago. So there's no way that Jeff Chandler could have been a cross-dressing transvestite, nor could Johnny Weissmuller have been a rapist. And she wrote nasty things about everyone, but she doesn't talk about Busby Berkeley being a blackout drunk who could have possibly molested women. Who knows what he did when he couldn't remember what he did?
Yeah.
And she sidestepped all this, and she ruined. Well, a lot of stars, I think Barbara Stanwyck among them, who all knew Jeff Chandler, and Jeff was a wonderful guy. My problem with these biography things that the daughters do, it's the women usually.
Yeah.
Maria Riva wrote a book about her mother, Marlene Dietrich, and lied about so many things in it to make herself look better because she was a disgruntled actress.
Yeah.
Christina Crawford's book is a pack of lies.
Right.
It is a pack of lies, not one true word in it, by an absolutely hideous woman who was adopted, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And because she couldn't be what Joan was, she tried to get even with her.
Yeah.
Dick, one of the things we have to do with movies is, with art, is separate the person from the artist, the movie from the movie maker. I mean, I know people are having a hard time with Woody Allen and, Kevin Spacey and all these different people that get canceled.
Yeah.
James Franco, all these people, for one reason or another, in their private life. But let me tell you something. When you read Esther Williams' book, you realize, what she did to her children when she met Fernando Lamas.
Oh.
She just ignored them. She just kicked them out of her life because Fernando, who was a chauvinist, said, "You're going to be my wife. You're going to do what I tell you. Get on the floor, worship me."
Yeah.
And she did.
Yeah.
And then the other husband she had, she gave him all her money. She's just saying in this book, I have to pay for companionship. I have to pay for it. And I'm a movie star. But I'm paying these men.
Well, it's
every one of her husbands took her for a ride.
Yeah.
Except Fernando. And I'll tell you, I interviewed Lorenzo Lamas, whose mother was not Esther. He was so angry when people would confuse the issue. His mother was Arlene Dahl.
Right.
And Arlene Dahl was a sweetheart.
Yes.
And Lorenzo told me, when I did a long interview with him when I was writing for filming in England, and Lorenzo said to me, "Look, whatever Esther says, take it with a grain of salt."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's her stepson.
Well,
she was prone to making up stories.
Right.
This woman.
And what's especially galling, and this is maybe something you're not aware of, because after I read the Esther Williams book and was outraged by her treatment of her children and Jeff Chandler, but especially also about the way she mistreated her children by literally throwing them out of her life, I happened, just by coincidence, to run a movie called Calloway Went That Away with Howard Keel, Fred McMurray, Dorothy McGuire. And Esther has a cameo in that. And the cameo of Esther is telling Howard Keel, now you be good to your children, your children fans, you be nice to them, you embrace. And I almost fell off my couch. It was unbelievable.
Well, I got.
But wait a minute, We're getting a little off topic because we do
Okay.
now. Let's talk a little bit about Raw Wind in Eden, which is an exotic island adventure, which I'm very surprised, by the way, that Esther allowed this gorgeous olive-skinned Italian actress named Rossana Podesta in the movie, because every time Rossana is on screen, my eyes instantly stray from Esther to her. I'm very.
Well, you realize she had done Helen of Troy.
Yes,
so
of
she
course.
had been in a really, yeah.
Yeah, and she co-starred with Alan Ladd in Santiago. So, but, oh God, was she gorgeous. And by the way, the film also co-stars Carlos Thompson, who became Lily Palmer's husband and was coming off a 2-picture deal with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Flame in the Flesh and Valley of the Kings. So it's kind of interesting to see him there. And this is the kind of movie, I wonder whether you would agree, where you just sit back, watch the scenery, and it's sort of a getaway. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, I would. And as a matter of fact, when Daniel and I were talking about it, and we both felt it was kind of a disappointing movie, that it didn't really, it's always the script. If it's not on the page, it's not on the screen. That's, just an adage that's the truth.
Yeah.
And it's a travel log, but first of all, movies that are set in exotic places like Italy. For example, I remember a movie that I saw as a kid, Come September.
Oh, yeah.
Kino Lorber and Rock.
Rock
It's a
Hudson.
great movie, loads of fun,
Yeah.
but utterly ridiculous that anyone in Italy would care if two people were living together and weren't married.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in the wrong country to bring up these things. And that's the truth in Raw Wind in Eden. No one cares if everyone sleeps with everyone on this. In fact, it would have made it a more interesting movie. Maybe Pasolini should have directed, then it really would have been but then it would have needed a laugh track. But the thing is, nothing really happens on this island except this guy, Rick Batula, I think is his name, was like a hunky Italian actor
Yeah.
who's been in a number of movies, including a couple of horror movies with my friend Barbara Steele,
Yeah.
Nightmare Castle being one of them, I think.
Yeah.
And he keeps his role in it. He comes to the island and starts shooting at people because he wants to marry Rosanna. So it's just I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't,
And of course,
but it doesn't.
obnoxious-
It doesn't have to. It's an escapist movie, and one of
Exactly. Well, it was very popular too, I think.
Really?
Well, I noticed if you look online, there's an old YouTube clip of the opening of Raw Wind in New York or something, and she and Jeff attended. Obviously, they were I think happened? They were engaged when they made Raw Wind, and during the making of it, they broke up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I'm sure it wasn't because he was wearing, Balenciaga gowns. I'm sorry. Listen, if that had been the case, don't you think Joan Crawford would have said something to somebody?
Right.
One of the great things about Raw Wind in Eden is to see it in this gorgeous 2K, I guess it's a 2K transfer.
Yeah. No. But as we're kind of running out of time, but that's the perfect cue, because I want to mention the fact to our audience that for any dedicated film fans, both The Unguarded Moment and Raw Wind in Eden are really essential viewing as far as I'm concerned, especially because Kino Lorber has put out two of the most luscious color transfers that you'll see anywhere. They've done these two movies proud. And
they have. Kino is doing such an incredible job.
You mentioned some news last night when we had our first conversation that set
Yes.
my heart aflutter. You will be doing the commentary on Kino's eventual release of The Carpetbaggers. And David,
I know.
if you don't agree to be on the show when that comes out with me, I'm going to cry a lot.
Oh, are you kidding? I'll do any of your shows, Dick. Anything you want. But, I'm so glad you like this movie because I don't always get a chance to do the movies that I'm most passionate about, which is a shame.
Yeah.
But occasionally the synchronicity kicks in, and I get to do a movie that I really like. Like when I did Female on the Beach, that was a real favorite of mine, and I enjoyed doing that one so much.
Yeah.
But I will definitely be on your show again for that, and I can't wait until we can finally talk about it.
I'll look forward to it, and thank you so much.
Because I know you're a big fan of Alan Ladd.
Huge fan of Alan Ladd. Huge fan of Alan Ladd. So I'm really looking forward to doing that show with you. And David, thank you so much.
It took us 18 years to do this, my friend.
It did. It did. And thanks again, David.
Oh, it's always my pleasure, Dick.
Well, that's my show for today. DVD Classics Corner on the Air is conceived, written, produced, and directed by me, Double D. And if you'd like to hear some of my older vintage shows, please go to www.dvdclassicscorner.net, where in addition to the broadcasts, you'll find hundreds of my print reviews of classic DVD releases. So, until next week,
keep well, keep happy, and keep listening.